World War I. One of the bloodiest wars in the history of the human race. 4 years of brutal fighting, with it mostly being fought in the trenches. This was known as trench warfare. The trenches themselves were not the best in the world during the early years of the war. The British thought it would all be over by Christmas. But it wasn't. The British trenches during the early days were rushed, and often leading to the trenches collapsing on them, and illnesses like trench foot. But over the course of the war, the trenches improved and became more stable and safe to use, which also, however, began a stalemate and the war of attrition between the Triple Alliance and the Triple Entente. Here is a diagram of the trench. Here, we see the front line trench. This was the main defense, and where most of the soldiers spent their time either sleeping, watching for enemies, or preparing to run at the enemy. In front was some barbed wire that stopped the enemy from getting over, but would stop your allied soldier from getting over it easily. In front of that were wired obstacles which were used to take the enemy by surprise. This is the inside of a trench. Here, you can see that there are trench boards. These were used to prevent trench foot and other illnesses. Next to it is a revetment which held the next smaller trench board for soldiers to peep over and either watch for enemies, prepare to get out of the trench, or fire at incoming enemies, which was supported by another revetment before reaching the sandbag wall, which was used to protect the soldiers from shrapnel by enemy artillery. Behind is a machine gun nest, where the machine gun of the time was placed to protect it as well as shooting down incoming enemies. Machine guns were operated by 3 people: the shooter, the reloader, and the cooler, which kept the barrel cool, otherwise it would overheat. Newton's third law of aerodynamics, people. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Behind the front line was the first support line. In the event that if the enemy were to successfully breach the front line trench, the soldiers would fall back to the first support trench and try to defeat them there. Behind that was the artillery line. This is where the artillery was used to attempt to destroy the enemy's trenches and make a breach for the soldiers. The artillery was mainly immobile artillery guns, but there were mobile artillery guns during their war. Other trench lines would be used for the supply line and ammo dumps, where the shells would go. These trenches would be brutal, uncomfortable, cramped and poor. But if it weren't for the trenches, more people might have died than the estimated 1 million deaths.